Hi class, so this will be the final lecture on the wasteland. I'm going to cover parts 4 and 5 of the poem, so let me switch to the poem. Okay, so part 4 is called Death by Water, and I'll talk about the title in a moment, but essentially like what's going on here is it's kind of a cautionary tale, and it talks about a sailor who succumbs to the elements. He succumbs to water, and it's the thing that he knows the best, like he's dedicated his life to this, so it's in a way sort of ironic. Um, but essentially he's forgotten the cry of gulls and the deep sea swell and the profit and loss. So it's ironic, right? The sailor died by water, forgot about the elements, forgot about the danger, forgot about how powerful the ocean was, and the fact that death is needed for rebirth, right? And has gone to a current under the sea, which could be an underworld. And the sea is picking his bones in whispers as he rises and falls. And so again, death is not gentle. Death is ravenous, right? It's resourceful, and talks about how his youth is lost, his life is ended, and entering the whirlpool, which could be purgatory. We don't know. And then there's these interesting lines at the end: Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look windward, consider Plebus, who was once handsome and tall as you. So again, this is a cautionary tale, right? Saying Jew or not, value your life, right? Pay attention to the warnings of life. Oh, you who turn the wheel and look to windward, be careful of ideas of progress, be careful of the glory of war, right? Referencing World War One, because they're going to equal your destruction and your downfall, right? Consider Plebus, who was once handsome as tall as you. So it's cautionary. Don't fall for hubris. Don't fall for pride. Again, going back to the title, again, there's something ironic about it. This whole epic poem, they've been asking for rain and relief. And when rain comes and water comes, it leads to demise and death, right? So again, they've succumbed to drowning. So again, it's a cautionary tale. There's something about it that's ironic. Then we've got part 5 with the thunder set. So everything in this poem has culminated to this last part, and there's a lot here. It's complex, and I'm going to do my best. So bear with me. So just to give you like a kind of bare bones overview. So essentially in this first part, there's a reference to just like right before, the rain comes, right? Like we are now in apocalypse, and prison and palace and reverberation of thunder of spring over distant mountains. So there's like a duality here, right? A palace and prison, heaven and hell, giving versus greed, right? And then reverberation, the consequences of such, right? Everything has consequences. He who is living is now dead. This could be a reference to God, to Jesus, to man, who knows. We who were living are now dying with little patience. We've given up, right? Like we're done, essentially, is what it's saying here. Then there's references to an infertile land, right? No water, just rock, just sandy road, which could also be a reference to the Bible, in which people were man was forced to walk on the earth barefoot, and, be in pain from that. And that was, a consequence of sin. It could be a reference to that. And again, the land is infertile, it's dead, there's despair. And then there's this interesting kind of conversation of who is the third who walks beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together. But when I look ahead up the road, there's always another who walks beside you. So the white road could be heaven or hell, the afterlife, death. The one that walks besides could be God, Jesus, death. But it's repeated over and over, and it says, but who is on the other side of you? And so this could be acknowledgement of the unseen. So something that isn't necessarily visual. So hope, God, faith, whatever it might be, whatever it means to you. Then there's this talk of the hooded horde swarming. Now, this could be locusts, the end of days. And then, the cracks and reforms and bursts in the violet air, silence before the storm, right? And then acknowledgement of the failure of civilization, the failure of progress, with all of these great kind of civilizations mentions that we know have failed. And so he groups them together here. And then there's these kind of eerie images of a woman playing music with her hair. And this bats with baby faces in the violet light, right? And everything's upside down, topsy-turvy and backwards, right? Everything is kind of not right. And the voices singing out of empty cisterns and exhausted wells, there's no life, there's no hope. It's done, essentially. And then, the dry bones can harm no one, everything and everyone is gone. And then all of a sudden this rooster comes and sings a little song, and rain finally comes and brings relief. And you can look at that and interpret it however you want. I just think it was necessary. It has to happen, right? There has to be some shift. Then there's these interesting lines in which the Eastern religions and the Eastern philosophies are kind of brought into the Western ideas, right? Like there's something about that that's very, you could look at it as really refreshing or dooming. I mean, I don't know, it depends. But the sacred river in India is mentioned, which people use to bathe in, right, to clean themselves, not just physically but spiritually. Then there's this conversation between Da and Dada, which is based on a Hindu mythology where there's a discussion about self-control and compassion, and giving and charity. So what have we given? That could be notating like charity. Our under seal is broken by the lean solicitor. Society has been greedy and selfish, right? And then I have heard the key, turn in the door once and turn only once. You know, people are living in an inner prison. Free yourself from your man-made prison, right? Free yourself. And this could be a spiritual reference or a physical reference. Depends on how you interpret it. And then the sea was calm, your heart would have responded. This idea of being compassionate, being self-controlled, like being aware. Then there's this reference to both the Fisher King and Dante's Inferno. You can Google those, or you don't need to know what they are for this, but essentially there's just a fisherman, and he's on the shore after all this craziness and all this lightning and just chaos, and he's kind of just ready to die. He's lived a good life. But there's an acknowledgement of, you know, civilization falling, reference to Dante's Inferno, although it's a little bit more hopeful. And then it ends with Shanti, 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 which means inner peace or peace, right? And the way you can interpret this is either, you know, a hopeful note or a not so hopeful note. I'm sort of a pessimist, and I look at the end of this as kind of a dooming thing, like the society's never gonna, you know, accept these kind of concepts of giving and charity and self-control. But the call for peace could be a good one, or it could be, you know, a damning one, like a realization of, oh man, this is it. So it really depends on how you want to interpret it. Anyway, so that's all I've got for you guys. Do feel free to ask questions if you have any.